we as a society are getting healthier or sicker?
We're going down big time fast, especially in America. It's the worst of the worst.
It's so bad. If you think about that, that's so bad.
How could you literally create health by eating something dead? It's impossible.
The biggest mainstream accepted health idea that is probably the most damaging.
There is no bad foods.
If it fits your macros kind of thing, or
Well,
like what?
there is no such thing as any bad foods. As long as you're eating in moderation, you're fine. You can't shame food.
Some of the shit that you see on social must make you just wonder, like, what happened? What happened to society?
The key is going to be educating people, and then like you feel better. So it's going to be really hard for anyone to change your mind about those foods and get you back to junk food because you have the knowledge.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. HubSpot has been a huge supporter of the show since day one, and I chose to partner with HubSpot because they support entrepreneurs. At the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur. A lot of people that listen to this show are entrepreneurs, and it's hard, and HubSpot creates solutions for entrepreneurs so it's not as difficult. One of the number one problems that all entrepreneurs have is keeping customers happy. It's one thing to acquire customers, keeping them happy, boosting customer satisfaction is a whole other can of worms. It's not easy, but there is an all new service hub from HubSpot, and it makes it infinitely easier to scale customer support and increase customer retention. Remember, the cheapest customer to acquire is a customer you already have. By bringing service and support together in one powerful platform, you can deliver the best experiences for your customers and your teams. You free up time for your reps, focus on complex issues because HubSpot has an AI-powered help desk. You proactively drive retention with customer health scores that keep your business ahead, stopping churn in its track, and give your entire go-to-market team the data they need to operate as one unified, powerful front. Also, you can easily support, strengthen, and grow your customer base. What's the point of acquiring customers if they all just leave? The secret's out. HubSpot's Service Hub is a game changer. Also, you can better connect with your customers and keep them happy. Visit HubSpot.com/service to do more for your customers today. Dr. Eric Berg, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I think that how I want to start this off is a very broad question, very open-ended question, as all good podcasters are known for asking. Do you feel like we as a society are getting healthier or sicker?
We're going down big time fast, especially in America. It's the worst of the worst. So you can look at the trends. Heart disease, cancer, autoimmune is now surpassing both heart disease as well as cancer. So we're going downhill very fast, accelerated.
And so, okay, that's obviously very, very doom and gloom. What do you think, is the biggest cause of us going downhill so fast? Because when you zoom out, you feel like we have access to more technology, we should be more knowledgeable. Information is truly democratized in terms of what's good, what's bad, but I think there's a lot of noise out there too, so it could be confusing. We can sort of touch on that as well. But what are the biggest things or levers that are pushing us in the wrong direction in terms of health, wellness, diet, nutrition, all of it?
Yeah, I think the whole system is rewarded to treat disease, right? We're not into creating health, we're into treating symptoms. You don't go to a doctor unless you have a symptom. And so you have this, you have a combination of a lot of money to be made in drugs, food, chemicals. And so if we take a look at just the United States, we spend more on healthcare than any other place in the world, yet we have the worst statistics. So throwing more money at it just has not worked because it's like more drugs, right? So like my neighbor, for example, I live in a small town, population 400. And so there's some people in the country here that just, they're just very low awareness on what to eat and things like that. So this gal, she's 36 years old. She's on 12 different drugs and she's just like disabled. And like they keep giving her another drug, right? So I think the problem is the system. The system is based not on creating health, it's creating on just treating disease and symptoms. So kind of that's where everyone's stuck in. So what we're doing as on a positive thing is I changed my goal this year to really get down to this basic element of introducing real food into the average person. So I took a family to start out with. I videoed the whole thing. I went to their house, went through their their pantry, their refrigerator, and I saw what they're eating. And so I did a little quick intro on basics on food and how to read the label. And then we went to the grocery store and we switched out kind of their foods with some healthier foods. And I was literally shocked that they never, ever, ever, ever read or even looked at the label. They just buy food. So we did a whole thing, and it was really good because from now on, they're going to be looking at labels and identifying the key factors in these foods they have to avoid. And I made it really simple. But I think what I want to do is I want to do that on a bigger scale. So we're doing a whole campaign on just getting people to eat real food. And it's not necessarily a diet, but they also have the realization that, ultra processed food or junk food is actually not even food based on the definition of food. So it was a huge realization on their part.
It's so interesting because even you said like, in a rural town, people aren't as focused on what they're eating, but I don't even think I don't think it matters where you live. I think it's just, I think that everybody, especially in the US, I think food is, for a small select percentage of the population, maybe it is a priority to eat healthier and eat better, but then it's very expensive, or there's a perception it's very expensive, and it feels like it's very expensive. And even when you are trying to eat healthier, and maybe you're if you go to a restaurant, you don't know really what's in the food. And then there's like the common idea that you hear a lot. Well, when I go to Europe, I seem to lose weight and eat anything. But when I eat anything in the US, even if I try and be healthy, I feel like bloated and kind of like shit. So is it as simple as just getting the right foods at the grocery store, or is there something more that like we have to be aware of? Like, what's your definition? When you say ultra processed foods, you're talking about like chips and junk food and stuff like that is like very traditionally ultra processed. And I think that everybody would be like, that's not great, but if I have it once in a while, it's not going to kill me. But are there other more maybe types of foods that we don't immediately think of as ultra processed that we eat on a day-to-day that makes us feel like garbage or affects our health, wellness, disease, whatever, that we're not as cognizant of?
You mentioned several things I want to cover. First of all, the expense, right? How much does it cost for this? Is it cheaper to get white bread, for example? Well, think about the cost of your long-term health, right? I mean, it's so much cheaper to invest in your true insurance, which is good food, right? Because if you're eating this junk food, you might save a little initially, not much, but you're not paying. You're paying for your health and and your vitality and your enjoyment and good health. So if we take a look at just the word ultra processed foods, right? The definition of process means to remove. So we have this processed food, they remove things. They remove fiber, nutrition, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. They're removing water. They're just taking everything out of it. And they might start with like corn, and then they have to ultra process it, which means severely take away things, right? To the point where they have to pressurize it, heat it, high temperatures. They have to decolorize it, deodorize it, take solvents and extract certain things. And then you're left with this little thing of powder, right? It's like a modified food starch, something like that, or maybe glucose syrup, right? Or maybe seed oils. Those are the three things. Like you have, starches, sugars, and oils. So let me ask you this. Would you actually eat that as is?
No, of course not.
We have to colorize it. We have to put some flavor on it. Enhancers. We have to make the texture a little bit better than powder, and then preserve it. So then we package it in these beautiful little boxes, cereal boxes, and then we can eat it. But when you're eating ultra processed food, you're eating something that is so far down the scale of zero life, there's no more life in the food. So the definition of the word food is that which is eaten to sustain life, provide energy, and promote the growth and repair of tissue. Well, it doesn't fit the definition. So how could you literally create health by eating something dead? It's impossible. So I think what's happening is that, we're surviving just barely. We're running on adrenaline because when you don't have enough energy, your body starts running on adrenaline. So you got all these people that are, they might, have their symptoms managed by medications, but they're not healthy on the inside. And so they're coping, and it's become normalized to eat these junk foods. But what's interesting about
it become normalized to feel like garbage too. And then you're just...
Yeah, right. You're getting older. Like right now, I just turned 59. Okay, so
seriously?
Yeah. And so I'm running up mountains. I run mountains right now. That's what I do. And so the other day I had some people over, and they're all younger than me.
Yeah.
And no one was interested in running the mountain. So I ran the mountain. They're taking pictures. I'm like, come on, let's go. They're like, no, I can't do that. So I think that it's been normalized that as we get older, we have to move less and all this other crap, but it's not true. So yeah, I think, there's a lot to unpack on this topic, but I'll let you guide me what you want to know about. But
well, yeah.
Right.
No, I was going to say, so the other piece that I just mentioned was, I just want to frame or maybe just make people aware of things that are not ultra processed, but are still very, very negative and impactful on your health, that are probably like a little bit more under the radar. Because of course, ultra processed, and I want to speak about the things that it does to the things that these types of foods do to your body. But what are the under the radar things that we have to be aware of that maybe we're not?
Well, first of all, if you look up junk food, there's this huge narrative. People talk about saturated fat, salt, and sugar, when in fact, you don't actually find a lot of saturated fat in junk food. It's unsaturated fat, and that's interesting. The seed oils. Now, people tend to consider like a hamburger ultra processed food only because it's associated with like the fries and the soda, but like a burger on meat is not necessarily ultra processed food. The bun is, but not the meat. So there's definitely been this huge movement to get people away from anything meat-wise to go plant-based, and there's a whole reason for that, which I won't get into. But I think one of the big omissions that no one's talking about, they talk about sugar, talk about salt, talk about fats, but what about starches? I'm talking about synthetic starches, because if you look at any label, the ingredients in any junk food, it has a couple ingredients that are the starches. We're not talking about potatoes. We're talking about modified food starch, modified corn starch, maltodextrin. People don't even know what those are, but those are the powders that come from corn and similar things that are literally way worse than sugar, because even on the glycemic index, like maltodextrin is way up here, sugar's right here. So people think, I'm eating this thing, it's no sugar, but it's fine. But yeah, but look at the amount of starch. In fact, I'm going to do a video tomorrow showing you 2 labels, and I'm not going to show the ingredients. I'm just going to show you the nutrition facts and see if you can pick out which one is healthier. And most people, when I've done this, pick out the one on the right, which is Doritos, and versus an avocado. And because you can't really get a lot of information from a nutritional facts, because it just looks at fats, carbohydrates, sugars. You have to forget that and look at the ingredients. That's the important thing.
And then when you go beyond like just the calories and the nutrients, because you just mentioned macronutrients, and of course you're missing on the micronutrients as well if you're eating all this ultra processed, which is really what's removed. What are some of the long-term health implications? Metabolism, maybe hormones, autoimmune, appetite regulation, all this stuff that goes haywire when you eat garbage.
There's nothing else that is more causative for disease than ultra-processed food. I don't know if you can think of anything. I mean, yeah, you have people that get infections, toxicity in the environment, preservatives, colorings, all that stuff doesn't even compare to the refined synthetic sugars, refined synthetic starches, and the seed oils. So that's like the bottom of the barrel. That's the stuff that shortens your life, increases your risk for cancer, cardiovascular disease, inflammatory conditions, autoimmune, especially since most of these problems start in the gut. So they involve you eating something that ends up going in the gut and creating holes in it and problems. So yeah, you go to the doctor, what's really missing is the evaluation on foods. They don't have the focus on like, what are you eating? They never ask that question. It's not part of the equation. So, but it is the thing that is the root of most of these problems. Yet, people say, oh, you just have to eat better and eat everything in moderation. Oh, really? Is that going to help? We've tried that. It doesn't work. So yeah, I think it's identifying the simplicity of what to avoid, those three things. And then the other things are less important. But if you can just get those out of the diet, you'll instantly start feeling a lot better. And not having to wait a long time, because it'll create the biggest impact if you do that. So we have, seed oils actually are very highly inflammatory. They can leach into your cell membranes and your brain and your nervous system and the fat cells for literally about 2.5 years. So it kind of gets stuck in there. And we've switched from saturated fats to the unsaturated seed oils, a few decades ago, and that really is a kind of a date coincidence of things started going downhill. So that is a big, huge factor, the seed oils, and it's in your salad dressing, it's in all the ultra processed foods, it's in all. When you go to the restaurant, right, try to find a food without the seed oils. I mean, every restaurant, has this soy, corn oil, canola oil. That's what they're putting in it.
That they cook and they use that to cook anything. So now that's my point. So it's not even just the Doritos, right? Now it's like you're eating your vegetables or your steak or whatever from the restaurant, and it tastes delicious. And I'm sure there's probably you probably have some ideas to whether or not these types of oils or ultra processed foods could maybe even be like addictive to a degree. I'm sure there's something in there that makes them chemically exciting for the brain. But even the quote unquote healthy foods you're trying to get at a restaurant are not great if they have this shit in it.
Yeah, I think what I need to do now is do a video on what to eat at a restaurant, because I don't think people now like to go to the restaurant. What do you order? How do you know what to avoid? I'm focusing on the grocery store right now, but I'm going to be shifting to and also I want to get restaurants to start. Like there's a couple restaurants in Texas that are like no seed oils. I'm like, great, that would be awesome. I don't know when you grew up, but I know when in the 70s when I grew up, I didn't see many overweight people, and we ate a lot of junk food, but we didn't have the amount of seed oils back then. Like that happened a little bit later. And so that's interesting, because I remember, I mean, we had it's like, wow, there's hardly any overweight kids, but now,
now it's really bad. Do you think that there is, I mentioned before, people feel like when they go to Europe, they feel like they're healthier. Have you looked into like regulation in terms of what's put into food? Is there any science behind that or reason behind that? Or is that just because you're walking around, you're walking around Rome for like 8 hours a day, and then you have that bias that you're actually losing weight when you're really just doing a lot more activity? Is there like a real food reason?
Yeah, I went. That's what inspired me. I went to Europe, Rome. I went to Italy, and I went to France and other countries. And I'm like, wow, why aren't I bloating? Why do I feel so much better despite, eating some of the bad things? Well, a couple reasons for that. First of all, the ingredients are very, very different. They don't use as many seed oils. They'll even fry with like olive oil. If you go to a restaurant, they really take a lot of pride in their cultural foods. Like they get food from the farm, to certain farms that they get their food from, and so the whole farming and the cheese and Like here we have Kraft. I think they patented or something or trademarked Parmesan cheese. Over there, they have a little different. It's the authentic, I think Parmigiano cheese that's completely, authentic. Here, it's like it's degraded. Also, the wheat over there is different, and they also ferment the bread. Here, we barely ferment it we might ferment it for like an hour or something, or 2 hours, or maybe even a day. But there, it's like a couple days. So now we have something that's easier to digest. They don't also have as much as enrichment, like the heavy iron fortification. So when you eat food here, you feel like there's a rock in your stomach. So it's definitely, there's a lot of, like even in France, nose to tail, they have a lot of different recipes that you're eating much higher quality food. So that's one of the things that I really want to support the small farmer in America, so people can find food from their local farmers that can get close to the quality that you would get in Europe. It's much better in Europe, absolutely. Raw milk, cheese, right? It's hard to get it, if impossible, in America. So raw milk cheese is super healthy. And, even like you buy some cheese from goats that are on a mountaintop in France, like just eat that cheese. So just see how good you feel. It's so much different than here.
You meant like a lot of the conversation revolves around seed oil. I guess the first question would be, is it just a commercial reason as to why it is the most viable or the most commonly used type of oil for a lot of these types of foods? Is there any reason why we wouldn't use more, I guess, healthy oils, or is it I guess I'm just confused as to why we've gone down this rabbit hole and we're stuck here.
It's basically, the reason they do it is to decrease or increase the shelf life. Because if you refine, you're taking away enzymes, you're taking things away from it, you're preserving it so it can sit on the shelf longer. If you go to the Dollar General store in America, you will find a lot of food that has been sitting on the shelf for months and months and months. So could you imagine how expensive it would be to have real food that you have to replace every week, right? Because it goes bad. So financially, it makes much more sense to preserve food and to be able to keep it on the shelf in a can, in a box, something like that. So financially, and the other thing that's, some of these companies are rewarded because they're subsidized by the government, which is actually you. So you pay on the front end because they get, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's 1.6 trillion subsidized. So corn, soy, wheat, sugar, beet sugar. And so here taxpayers pay the farmers to grow this, right? Get it such a cheap rate. These companies then turn it into junk food, and then we buy it again, second time, and then we pay a third time at the doctor, because basically much of the disease out there is just side effects of ultra-processed food. Not all, but a lot of it. And so there's a huge incentive with this system of staying in this area of ultra-processed food. And, it's going to take a lot to shift this whole idea, because the market is set up and it's just like incredibly profitable, Yeah,
well, I was going to say, if the market supports it, it's tough to shift a consumer. However, if you can get somebody, so like what this family that you mentioned, where you're taking them shopping, you're showing them how to look at what's in an actual, product, or what the actual ingredient makeup is, and they change their eating habits. If you can get somebody on a path where I think they immediately start to feel better, I think that is probably the quickest path to changing a habit. If they feel better. I mean, so for example, like when I cut out, I'm not gluten intolerant per se, but if I cut out gluten and I go on a lower carb or even keto diet, I'm like, cognitively, I feel better. Like I feel sharper, I feel more energy, I feel more balanced, I don't have peaks and valleys. I know that from a scientific perspective, I know my glucose is more regulated. I'm not having a huge high and then a crash after I eat a big meal. So I'm not, falling asleep at my desk around 4. So there's a lot of reasons as to why I like to incorporate like a lower carb lifestyle. And it's like, yeah, you look good. Okay, that's cool. I don't mind the food. But then also you just feel better. So if you were, and this is just my personal experience, but if you were going to talk to that family and you say, look, this is like the one change that I want you to make because I want you to get hooked on a better lifestyle. What is that major change that will produce that immediate positive feedback loop where they are like, yes, I get it. I feel it in like the first week?
I've been in this area for 30 years or longer than that, and even in practice, and you can't just tell people just to change their diet. They need to know why. So, I spend a little time educating them what's happening in the body when they eat real food versus the fake food. So that's one part, is the education. And then the second is doing a transparent deep dive into where actual food comes from and where the fake food comes from, because you like certain food, you can't know where it comes from. You don't know where it comes from. Like try to go to Tyson's Chicken, where they have the huge buildings, and see if you can get a tour to see your chicken that you're going to eat. You can't, it's private. They don't want you to know. Or have you ever seen the factory where they make maltodextrin or modified food starch? You can't know that. I hired a food scientist who used to work in that area, and I got a little insight of that whole world. It's super secretive. They don't want people to know. It's like, wow, crazy. So, they have pictures of these wonderful, chickens that are free range. It's all natural. And then I bet you that's probably not what's really happening.
No, that's just the marketing campaign. When you think about, okay, so there's education, but taking it a step further. So talk to me about metabolomics. What is metabolomics? I want to understand sort of like from a deeper level. So from what I understood, and listen, this is me researching before this podcast. This is not me being a subject matter expert in this by any means, but it's just helping you understand like how you react. And is that on a biological level? Is that is certain genes or DNA, maybe they react to different foods in different ways, or is there like one diet that really everybody could subscribe to that would be better? Are some people easier to, do some people, I guess, operate better when they eat garbage food? I'm just very curious about what this science or this study or this practice sort of unlocks.
Metabolomics is going to be the wave of the future for medicine. You probably heard of genomics, which they talk about the gene therapy. People get their DNA tested, and that was supposed to be the thing that was going to just change medicine forever, right? There's like 20,000 to 25,000 genes. That's a lot of data. There's a lot to look at, but it only tells you potentially what could happen. Mm-hmm. So then, as things evolved, and I'm going to skip a couple steps and go right to metabolomics, which you're basically taking a lot more information from your blood or your urine that goes way beyond just a simple blood test and looks deeper into your chemistry. So if I were able to look deeper into the chemistry and see all the different steps. So if you do a blood test, maybe you have, 15 to 20 things you're looking at.
Yeah.
But then when you metabolomics, you have 3,000. So you can actually get a picture of the dynamics of what's happening from the assembly line, from food all the way down to waste and all the different factors. So you can get a real good real-time picture of what's happening to your body from your diet, your lifestyle, your stress, everything together, real-time, what's happening. Like if we take let's just take the mitochondria, which is the energy factory of the cell. You have like, 12 little steps there, okay, that basically go from food into energy. And each step has certain enzymes that help make this chemical change from one thing to the next. If you can measure each one of those and see where the bottlenecks are, you can then see what's missing. For example, for an enzyme to work, this is where you need vitamins and minerals. People don't realize that. But vitamins, minerals actually help the enzymes to convert one thing to another. So I consume a really healthy diet, but they found I was severely deficient in vitamin C. I'm like, well, wait a second, I have normal vitamin C in my blood. Yeah, but the demand is so high because I run up hills. And so my body sucks it up. So to be able to see if you have sufficient nutrients, if it's all working, that's way more important to know what's going on in your blood. You can have like bone loss, osteoporosis, and have normal calcium in the blood. It doesn't really, the blood is is not the best place to identify problems because the body will compensate and things like that. I mean, just today we did a metabolomic testing on my dad, who's in his 80s, and his doctor found he has too much vitamin D in his blood. Okay, so he said stop taking vitamin D. I'm sorry, B12, and then we looked at his metabolomic test. He was like severely deficient in B12. Well, first of all, when you take a B12 supplement and then you go to the doctor and get it tested, it's going to show high amounts in your blood because you just took it. In fact, it'll stay in your blood for like 7 days. So to be able to see at the cell level what's really going on, that's very valuable. I wish I had this when I was in practice because it takes the mystery of what's really going on with your metabolism on a whole, not just like weight loss, but your overall health. So you can pick up amazing information and then do this over time to keep improving it. And so that way, we don't have to put everyone on the same diet. We can just use this testing to tell us what they need more of or less of. Because everyone, some people respond on this diet or in this diet. It's like you can't put everyone on the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. One thing, my father, the big thing about him is like he's severely low on protein. I mean, he has normal amount of protein, but you can see his muscle wasting. But on his mitochondria, there's hardly any protein going into that little feedback loop. So it's very valuable, and I think going into the future, if a doctor could use that, I mean, this would change everything because now you're not focusing on disease, you're focusing on, okay, how can we create more health versus,
I understand.
Oh, let's treat this symptom with a drug, but you haven't even looked at the root cause. You haven't even addressed the diet. I mean, like, why would you want to do that? It doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of value in really having the data to tell us what's going on for real and going deeper.
I just want to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's episode, HubSpot. Now, HubSpot has an incredible podcast network, the HubSpot Podcast Network. My show, Success Story, is part of it. But if you love great podcasts, you have to listen to Imperfect Action, hosted by Steph Taylor. She cuts to the chase. She dishes out actionable strategies on online marketing, content creation, social media, and more. Steph is your marketing obsessed friend. She's been in the trenches for years. She shares what works and what doesn't, so you skip that costly trial and error. If you crave friendly, educational content that gets results, Imperfect Action is your new favorite podcast. Check out Imperfect Action wherever you get your podcasts.
When you look at, so you answered all my questions. So there's no one diet that solves every problem for every person that's better or worse. It's really at the metabolomics really unlocks all the things that are broken within our bodies as to why whatever we're eating is not doing the job that it's supposed to be doing. So there is a massive amount. Yes.
Yeah. If you have initially, like most people have insulin resistance and they have weight problems and there might be a pre-diabetic. And so of course they're not very metabolically flexible. So they can't handle any sugar at all. So you have to get them off carbs and stuff. But you do that over a period of time, and they're in much better shape. They can handle healthier carbs, and so we're not talking about putting them on a lot, but they have more flexibility over time once they start healing the system. And depending on I mean, just think about how many. It's so hard to do a test to determine what everyone needs as far as a diet, because you also have different, like you have Asians, you have people from different, parts of the world that have their whole generations have lived on different types of food. So you can't, what's good for some people is not actually ideal for another person. So you have to look at the whole picture, and the bottom line is, if we could, since most diseases are at the mitochondrial level, if we could just get that thing to work, then whatever that person's doing it's going to be successful.
Is that? Well, I was going to say. I was going to ask. I was going to say, what diseases can you sort of look at? There's like a biomarker or a signal of an increased risk of some sort of disease or health problem. What can you look for with this type of test? Like it's you just answered, like cancer, heart disease. Like this is all. Like when you run these types of tests, you see all the leading indicators for all of these types of diseases, autoimmune, all of it?
Before they happen.
Wow.
Decades before they happen. So you can start looking at, oh, wow, high amounts of oxidative stress. Okay, inflammation. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of problems in that area, or even insulin resistance or problems with the microbiome or inability to detoxify. So you could predict things with this data, which is super valuable to be able to predict long before you even get a symptom. Wouldn't that be cool? So this goes
very cool.
I mean, let's say, for example, you're tired right now, right? I mean, you can drink an energy drink, but there's about 100 different reasons why you're tired. We can find out. We can find out why you're really tired by looking at this test and going, this is why you're tired. Or no, this is not why you're tired. I will tell you this, and this is really, really important. The worst thing you could possibly do to a patient is to give them the wrong diagnosis. It's kind of like telling your wife what their problem is. It's like you're going to mess things up. Like you never want to tell, what your problem is, honey? Like don't ever do that. So it's with a patient, you got to be very careful not to give them the wrong thing, because they will get worse just by that.
What would be like the gold standard if you look at the people that are offering this test right now, or where people can actually explore this? Because this is the first time I've ever heard of it. And I would assume, I think just because of my background and I played a lot of sports and I focus on health and wellness, that I'm more clocked into this community than even the average person, than probably that family that you helped buy food at the grocery store. So that being said, I've never heard of this. So where would somebody go to get one of these tests if they want to actually explore? Is it viable for, the public? Is it going to cost them $20,000? Is it something they go to their local doctor? Like, where do they go?
It's very, very new. Even though it's been around for a long time, the problem with this testing is you have to understand biochemistry. So it's a little bit like a lot of doctors, even in school. I went through pre-med myself. We all just memorized biochemistry and got through. We don't understand it until after you graduate and you relearn it and you have time to play with it and learn it. So there's a little learning curve, right, to biochemistry, because you have to be able to understand that. You can't just read this. So there's not a lot of clinics out there. There's one there's one really good one. It's in Greece. They do check people remotely. That one is really good because they have, they've done 60,000 people so far. So their database, they have the right normals to compare things with. And so that would be one. But what I reached out to this group and I said, listen, let me translate the course in English for you so we can bring it to America and start having doctors learn and get this information, because I think there's a lot of doctors that would want to know this data. So of course, I'm helping them do the course on it so more doctors can get trained. So that's happening soon. But in the meantime, there's like this team of 9 doctors. They do it all over the world right now, and from Greece and Rome, that's where they're located. But there's not a lot of places. But last year there was, I think, 81,000 different research studies on this topic. So it's definitely coming up, and there's a lot of people getting involved with it. They're talking about it. It's called personalized nutrition. But as right now, I wouldn't recommend a lot of different clinics because you have to have the experience. And it's like, okay, you see the test, but now how do you relate that to the person's diet? And so that's why I like this doctor in Greece. I feel, I had my parents go there, myself, my family, so I like it. But and I personally just, I do YouTube videos. I want to learn everything about it. So I'm physically taking his course now. Just not that I'm going to practice, but I want to know everything about it. So, and there's a little bit of a learning curve, because you have to understand biochemistry from a whole different level so you can apply it versus memorize it.
I was gonna say, so I see things in the market. I see things like people, you give someone a little bit of your saliva and they do like your disease history via your DNA. I've seen people do like gut flora checks and they prescribe a diet based on what they find in your gut. Are any of these things are these things BS? Are these things compared to the level of what this would do?
The problem with the microbiome, it's no one really understands it yet. It's just too much data. You're dealing with DNA from microbes, right? You're dealing with thousands of different species. It's like this is going to take some time to really figure that out. So we don't know a lot about microbiome. You get the analysis done, and it's like, okay, we're kind of guessing here. Now, as far as DNA testing, you're dealing with 20,000 to 25,000 genes. It's a lot of data. You can't really, initially I got into that and I started learning it, but the problem is it doesn't tell you what's happening in real time right now because it's just your DNA. It doesn't mean those genes are expressed because you have epigenetics, which is life that activates these genes. So you're going to treat someone based on their genes? Well, they might not even have a problem with that. Yes, it's a weakness, but it's not. If you have a lack of absorption of vitamin D, it doesn't necessarily tell you you're lacking vitamin D. So it's good to know that, but it's not the best test. And the microbiome, it's just too much data. I don't know if we're ever going to figure that one out because that's like extremely complex and no one really understands that yet. So you also get into looking at proteins and stuff like that. But if you keep going up the ladder, the metabolomics is going to be the best thing because that tells you we're only dealing with 3,000 metabolites, and you don't need to even know all of them, maybe 600 of them. And then what you can do is you can understand that and you can work with that. And you can, when you go to a functional medicine doctor, they'll do, they might even do a metabolomic testing, but then they switch to a hormone test. And then they switch over here to your genetic test. That's not how you want to do it. You want to stick with one thing over time and really improve it. The problem with blood test is that only tells you the tip of the iceberg, the symptom. It doesn't tell you, even if you take magnesium or potassium and you're looking at the blood, well, 99% of that, it's inside the cell. So it's kind of worthless. It's okay to test the blood, but we want to go deep into the chemistry, and so basically, obviously this presentation is just bringing the awareness up and just to put on a radar, because I don't think many people even know that there was a test like this that was in existence, but there is.
Amazing. I'm super curious because out of all the different topics, because you've done YouTube videos on everything, and two of the topics or two of the supplements that you focus on more recently is niacin and omegas. And I'm curious, I want to maybe just speak about those in more detail as to your thoughts on them. And I think that people have probably heard about omegas, maybe heard about niacin, but why are those the two things that are sort of top of mind to you in terms of all the different things you could be taking or focusing on that impact your health?
As you dive into the mitochondria, and there's something called the Krebs cycle, which is kind of a series of steps in that mitochondria that generate energy. There's one thing in there that's It's a heavy lifter that basically helps make the battery ATP, helps extract electrons and helps move things along. And it's called NAD. And you've heard of NAD as a supplement or NADH. And there's different versions of it. Well, that particular molecule is the precursor for that is vitamin B3, niacin. And there's a tremendous amount of research on niacin for cholesterol, but there's a lot more it can do in higher amounts because it feeds that NAD in the mitochondria. So there's you can actually improve just about everyone's mitochondria by giving them higher doses of vitamin B3 and in the form of niacin. You're going to feel much more energy. You're going to feel better. It's quite interesting. As I was looking at this, I'm like, for a lot of different reasons, mainly to help the mitochondria work better, niacin is a no-brainer, but you don't necessarily want to take it in the small RDA amounts, which are outdated by 100 years, and they only are there to prevent diseases as a prevention. Like have you ever heard of pellagra?
Pellagra, no. I have, no. I was going to ask you a question about NAD just very briefly, but tell me about pellagra first, because I've heard about NAD being like a very trendy supplement, but go into pellagra first. Sorry.
So basically there's certain vitamin deficiencies scurvy would be vitamin C deficiency. You have rickets is vitamin D, beriberi is B1, but then you have pellagra, which is vitamin B3 deficiency. And this occurred in the early 1900s where it was epidemic. I mean, people were getting serious, terrible inflammation, looked like leprosy on their skin. It was called the 4 Ds. Dermatitis, which is the stuff on the skin, dementia, diarrhea, and death, okay? I mean, this is how bad it was. And this is all because of a vitamin B3 deficiency. Now, how do you become deficient in vitamin D3? By eating refined corn and junk food and ultra-processed food. So what really I think is happening is we're getting a subclinical, a lot of people have a subclinical pellagra, dementia, a lot of digestive problems, neurological issues, things like that. And if you look at the food fortification anytime you eat anything with wheat, they fortify it, they enrich it with synthetic vitamins, but they don't actually, I've never seen they add B3. That's interesting to me. So anyway, I've been recommending it to, in some of my videos, and I'm getting the feedback. I'm like, wow, people really like that. I'm taking it. I really like it, but you need it in higher amounts. And so then now, of course, because I'm seeing a lot of results, I'm really doing a deep dive into this topic, because when you find something that works, orthomolecular medicine, they use higher doses. These are a medical group that uses higher doses of certain vitamins like vitamin C and niacin to create these really cool effects. So I'm finding fascinating, interesting benefits, even especially niacin is similar to nicotine too. So if you want to get someone off smoking, like addiction, nicotine addiction, you just give them a niacin and the cravings go away. But you have to use high amounts. Also, it's great for ADD, ADHD. And in that form, you'd want to give them niacinamide, which is a slightly different version. But anyway, that's why I got interested in the niacin recently. Did a lot of videos on it.
Because just to follow up on the last thing that I just mentioned, because NAD, I've seen in oral pill form. I've seen people taking NAD intravenously. But is that like a marketing gimmick? Is it that just, should you be, no, I mean, the point is, should you be taking niacin, the precursor for NAD, or should you be taking NAD directly?
Here's the thing. You could take the NAD, or you can just take niacin. It's a lot cheaper. Just take it, take more of it. It'll do the same thing. And so NAD has been recommended for longevity, okay? Because it helps you live longer. Why would it do that? Because it helps your mitochondria. And most diseases relate to the mitochondria. So you're you're going to create some interesting, cool effects. So NAD is an electron carrier. It carries these electrons. It's like it carries the battery charge. So you could actually have this energy storage, right? But there's also another one that no one's talking about called FAD. You don't even find a supplement on that. But the question is, what builds that? It's vitamin B2, not B3. Mm. And so what is that good for? Well, that's really good for tremors, neurological stuff, MS, migraines, cataracts, anti-cancer. So anyway, as I do deep dives in this stuff, I find I'm like asking questions, I'm like learning all this interesting data and research that you have to kind of like, where I found this is I found it in patents by neurologists who had all this data. I'm like, what? Like, why isn't this broadly promoted? And then, you have to understand the basic chemistry to be able to correlate it and understand it. But so I like to take different puzzle pieces, put it together, and then do videos on it. So I will be doing a video on tremors, Parkinson's, but anyone that has tremors or Parkinson's needs to take high doses of vitamin B2, not B3.
It's almost like everything can be solved if you know the right mechanism or the right supplement. It's just, again, we don't focus on that. Like you said, we focus on disease and what drug to prescribe versus true health. And it seems like a lot of the stuff that, people have issues with, it's just a matter of, again, knowing what that deficiency is, really.
Yeah, just getting back, because we're talking about the mitochondria. Have you heard of coenzyme Q10?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's another one people take for different things. That's another one that works in that mitochondria that also helps to make this battery thing, helps you get energy. One of the things about coenzyme Q10, you have to, when you take a statin, which is a cholesterol blocking medication, it depletes your coenzyme Q10 and you get all these muscle diseases and symptoms from it. So, but you also get neurological stuff too. So, high doses of coenzyme Q10 does miracles for things like tremors and neurological issues and muscle problems as well. But the point is that look at how many people are on statins right now. And they're just afraid of this cholesterol. Cholesterol is the most important tissues that is needed for cholesterol is your cell membranes. I mean, like every cell has a membrane. It's the outer part. And so you start decreasing your cholesterol and man, do you suffer a lot of issues in your brain and the nervous system and the cognitive function and the mood. So again, it's kind of like taking some of these myths on health and educating people on it, because unfortunately some of these medical schools only give you like 8 hours of education in nutrition. 8 hours. That's not quite enough.
That's what an average doctor, like an average PhD, would be going through before they...
I don't know about a PhD, but I know in certain medical schools, it's like 8 hours.
Wow. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. The other thing that you speak about quite often, you speak about omega-6. And I know that is, I think that's found in seed oils as well, but omegas are usually considered to be healthy. Like I put in air quotes, healthy, right? So what is the risk or impact of maybe taking too many omegas? Is that something that's good for you, bad for you? What's your opinion on that?
So it is true that we need, these omegas are essential fatty acids. They're essential fatty acids. It means that our body doesn't make them, so we need them, right? So, but we definitely don't need 30%, 25 to 30% of all of our calories are seed oils. We don't need that much. That's way too much. So when we do too much of that, that competes for the omega-3, which we need. We need more of that. And especially our brains, and our hearts and our cell membranes. So we're way out of balance with that. And so we have a lot of inflammatory issues, and also the quality of these seed oils is very, very low. And so certain food companies are using a couple studies that show that omega-6 oils do lower cholesterol, and then they're assuming, well, that's going to improve your heart. But in reality, it doesn't. It makes things worse. But they're still holding on to those studies as, well, we're going to use this. I mean, take for example, like grains in oats, like Cheerios. Is it Cheerios?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cheerios. Yeah. If you look at the label, heart healthy, you get away with that. That's insane. That's because they're operating off of those studies that show that it decreases cholesterol. But what I would like to do, in fact, I might do this myself. I'm going to be the human guinea pig. I'm going to consume that food. I'm going to do my blood profiles. I'm going to test everything and see if it really makes my heart healthy from the metabolomic testing. I will guarantee it won't. But yeah, so, or what about, you look at the seed oils, it says heart healthy seed oils. Really? Those unsaturated fats are so unstable. How can you even keep them in a clear bottle on the shelf for any period of time without going rancid? So it's gonna be one of those things where trans fats, people are gonna go, wow, we made a mistake for 80 years.
Yeah.
How long was margarine on the? It was like for,
oh my goodness,
almost 100 years. Margarine, really? I mean, How did they get away with it? The same thing. They keep doing it, and so unfortunately, a lot of people have to die before we find out it's bad for you.
But there is a movement in people that are trying to focus on their health and wellness. I think especially post-COVID, I think people are very cognizant of it. So I've never seen such a focus on people at least trying to learn what they should put in their body and how they should treat their body and what they should eat. And they want to work out more, and they're trying, now cold plunge this and red light sauna, and they're switching diets every 2 seconds. But whatever, like the point is, it's like a journey of learning, which is better than ignorance.
But there, a parallel with that, there's a lot of campaigns going on to get people to eat clean protein and get off meat, right? Because they consider red meat being toxic, and they mesh in there what's harmful for the environment. So we need to get off meat because it causes cancer. It's really, really unhealthy. In fact, they even made red meat and processed meat are carcinogen. So
really.
Yeah, but in reality, I don't know what other food could heal you as much as that red meat. I mean, it's like super healing. So anyway, it's kind of like, I think what happens is a lot of good things out there eventually get inverted. The stuff that's really good becomes the stuff that's really bad, and the stuff that they're recommending is actually the worst thing you could even recommend. So a lot of my material on my videos, I get simply by going through what is recommending in the mainstream. Okay, good. Now I need to go in the opposite direction, and I'll know I'll be 100% correct every single time.
It's so bad if you think about that. That's so bad. So like the food pyramid, all of that, all of it is so bad. Well, you wrote a book on keto, right? I think the Healthy Keto Plan. Yeah. So, I mean, that and I don't even know if you'd recommend it. Everybody does pure keto or some iteration of it. I mean, for me, it's like a 180 in terms of how you feel. Like, yeah, like maybe on the weekend I won't care as much, but I can guarantee you I feel like garbage, like absolute garbage, compared to when I'm eating like a strict keto diet. But it's just, I mean, I think if people listen to their own body more, I think that would also be smart. But what can you do? What can you do? What is the biggest, I mean, there's going to be so many, so pick one that's just fun. The biggest mainstream accepted health idea that is probably the most damaging.
I think the biggest one is there is no bad foods.
Like if it fits your macros kind of thing, or
no, just there is no such thing as any bad foods. As long as you're eating in moderation, you're fine.
Okay.
You can't shame food because that's discrimination, and that's put out by the junk food industry. And like And then this is why they even hire dietitians to, even if you go to their conventions, you'll see this huge slide off the Cheerios into this pool of Cheerios. I mean, so they're putting out, there's no such thing as you food shaming. And then it's okay to be fat, it's okay to be unhealthy. Don't discriminate again. I'm like, what are you talking about? You go to the store. We went to Walmart to find some food for this family. And I showed them the aisle on the infant formulas. And I said, go ahead and read the ingredients. It's exactly ultra-processed foods on steroids. So you start these kids out young, and then you turn them into a money machine, ATM for big pharma eventually. So start them out young, get them on medication, Ritalin, but I think things are changing, and I think, thank goodness with social media, you can bypass a lot of stuff. Stuff can go viral because it works. But of course, then you have the Ozempic, thing that's going viral too. And even the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that for kids. So, it's just one of those things where I think that the key is going to be educating people and then having them do it. And then like you feel better. So it's going to be really hard for anyone to change your mind about those foods and get you back to junk foods. I don't think that's going to happen because you have the knowledge and you can't go backwards. It's going to be really hard to anyone to change your mind.
The only issue with the internet and social media is you can also have bad ideas that spread very quickly too. And I'm sure, like as an expert and a doctor in this space, some of the shit that you see on social must make you just wonder, like, what happened to society? Because I see a lot of pretty wild health advice. So it's also like people need to expose themselves, and yes, good ideas can go viral, but also I think people need to, like, I'm just a fan of critical thinking regardless. Like you have to be a critical thinker to be the best version of yourself, and that includes with the people that you listen to and the information that you study and that you give yourself exposure to. So I think that, listen, you also have to be very critical, and I think that's also always been a big issue in the health and wellness space. It just seems like there's always so many opinions, and everyone they're like zealots of their own opinion, and no other opinion can ever be correct or right. So I think that's also probably not great for the layman who's just trying to figure out, what do I do next week? I don't know who to listen to. So I appreciate that, the studies that you do and the research that you do. I think it's important to show people why you come to the conclusions that you do versus some people just spout off facts, which is also not good.
Yeah. Well, if you take a look at how valuable is an opinion, how valuable is your opinion or my opinion or anyone else's opinion? I think the value is based on how well that opinion is been evaluated. Like, for example, I have 28 million subscribers on all my channels, and I get about 200 million views a month. Okay. And one of the things that I do that other influencers don't do in a video is I'll take a topic, and I'm not just going to give my opinion. I'm going to evaluate the hell out of it from every different angle. And I'm talking about inspecting it from upside down, backwards, both viewpoints, so we can play with it and look at it. And because if, for example, there's doctors that I interviewed that disagree with me, and they say, well, people aren't deficient. You can get all your nutrients from food. We don't really need to use supplements. And I go, that's your opinion, but you haven't evaluated that because I'll tell you right now, there's like tens of thousands of research studies that you haven't looked at. So they're basically making this conclusion without really inspecting and looking. And so what I do with my videos is I did a video recently on why are there hardly any fat people in Colorado? That's weird. So I went through some interesting data about what's unique about that. Also, what states have the most obesity and the correlated with that. And then I also brought up the wild variables, the paradoxes that are like weird. And I found something that correlated with that. And so obviously the truth is going to be correlating more with things that satisfy most of these arguments and explain those exceptions to the rule. That's going to be way more valuable than someone just giving their opinion because they're an expert or they have a degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
So yeah, and that's why I think that's what more videos should do rather than just give their opinion. It's like, okay, what? Because you have a degree like that. First of all, you're getting your information from SUNY University, which that doesn't tell you anything. So tell me about why you think that, and show me the data. Show me both sides. Someone's like, people are against meat eaters, right? Or even keto, it's going to kill you. But how do you explain all the people that benefited from keto? I mean, I have 8,000 success stories. Explain that. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Okay.
If you wanted to, first of all, I want to just give you the chance to just tell the audience, what to look forward to with what you're doing in the future. I mean, obviously you're going to keep putting out videos, new books, anything that you want to focus on going forward, just so they know what to expect.
One thing I'm very interested in, because we're talking about food, is supporting the local farmer. So I live on a farm and I have animals. I'm learning about farming. I spend half the day farming and fixing fences and learning about this stuff, and also feeding animals certain unique foods, and then sending that meat to the lab to see what the nutritional profiles are. So that's the area of research I'm really interested in, just to find a way to grow healthier food using food that doesn't cost so much money to feed these animals. Because I'll give you an example, like the pigs that I have. Do you know how much it costs? I mean, it's $25,000 a pig. I'm like, first of all, that's insane. Secondly, no one's going to afford that. And how do we find an alternative to that? I mean, how can a farmer actually get paid to be able to produce high quality food? I'm like, wow, that's hard. That's a hard problem. So that's one area of research. Also, I have a greenhouse. It's an 80,000 square foot greenhouse we're building in West Virginia. And I'm growing lettuce, not in the crappy hydroponic water, but in 6 inches of soil that's not sterilized. So I wanted to, because I do like salad, and as part of it, and so I can't find good salad. I mean, I can with my own garden. So we're trying to experiment on that, and as a side thing, just to figure that out. And it's kind of an R&D type thing. We'll have videos and teach people about that, and learn from experimentation. So that's another project that I'm doing on the side.
I love it. So if people want to connect, I mean, they probably have you on YouTube, Dr. Eric Berg. All the socials are Dr. Eric Berg. Website, they can see anything you're working on there. If you wanted to, so last two things I want to pull out of you. Just one last sort of message, call to action, word of warning, piece of advice, bit of insight to the audience. What would that be? Just one last message that you want to leave the audience with as they go sort of on their own health journey after they listen to the show.
I think there's always the solution is out there. And it's usually even in the literature, it's in the research. You just have to find it. So I'll spend a tremendous amount of time trying to find. You can't find it on the first 20 to 30 to 50 pages of Google. Okay, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be on YouTube. You have to dig deep. You have to assume that the answer is out there. That's number one. That's really important. That's what I always do. And then I find it. You have to find this little piece of gold or the solution, and then to solve your health problems. So you just have to assume that it's out there and then find it, but not look in the usual spaces because it's been censored. So I that's why I study patents, a lot of older textbooks to find certain pieces of information and then summarize it and put it out there. So I might have the video that you want, or, maybe you just do your own research and figure it out. So I guess that would be the answer to your question.
I love that. If you were gonna, it can be from a health and wellness perspective, or it could be from like a life well lived and lessons learned perspective. If you were gonna look back and tell your 20-year-old self one thing, what would that thing be?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think that, of course, if I knew what I knew back, now what I knew back then, or no, just reverse that. If I knew back then what I knew now, oh my gosh, it'd be a short circuit. But I think it was good to go through a lot of stress and failures and injuries and sicknesses and doing the wrong diet to force me to like if I never had any health problems, okay, and I had never stressed, I would not be doing this, because I kind of grew out of the school of hard knocks: stress, pain, injuries, failures, years of suffering, and just trying to figure it out. And then that forced me to look in other places and find someone that could help me, But if everything was great, I probably would never even gotten into health. It's terrible. I was the worst junk food junkie on the planet. And I had just about every single health problem. I think that's, on one hand, that forced me to go into this area. And now I'm helping a lot of people. So it's fun to help people. And I think that's a therapy. I think helping people is like my therapy. So